Hello and welcome. This is my wife Mary and I'm Ed, and we are Branch Davidian Seventh-Day Adventists. We are excited you are joining us today. We present or expound on a principle or belief related to the Seventh-Day Adventist Sabbath School Quarterly each week. This week we will cover Lesson 8 in the Quarterly, which looks at the three angels' messages and the everlasting gospel. For more information on the everlasting gospel, see our video for week 4 on our playlist with that same title. We are going to take this opportunity to talk more about Revelation 14. It's an exciting chapter pertaining to the Advent movement. Of course, as Adventists know, this is where the three angels' messages are found. But have you ever read the entire chapter and noticed there are more angels? Well, you are not alone. Even James White noticed this. Well, Mary, let's get right into it. What did Mr. White have to say about Revelation 14?
Okay, thank you. In A Word to the Little Flock, issued in 1847, James White says this in the section entitled Thoughts on Revelation 14. He says, all classes of Advent believers agree that the angel brought to view in the 6th and 7th verses of this chapter represent the Advent message to the church and to the world. If this is true, then all 5 of the angels brought to view in this chapter represent 5 distinct messages prior to the Advent, or we are left without a rule to interpret this chapter. The last 2 angels are messages of prayer. We shall no doubt better understand them at the time of their fulfillment. Again, that's Word to the Little Flock, page 11 through 12. Notice in this quote, which is approved of by Ellen White by reason of her publishing it with her name alongside that of Joseph Bates, James White says that there are 5 distinct messages we will have to understand before the second advent of Christ. He states that we don't yet understand these last 2 messages, but that he expects to understand them when they become present truth.
As we have spoken about before, we can see that prophecy is progressive. James White alludes to that here, and that we have more than just 3 angels. And those angels are messages to come after the 3 angels' messages. But I thought we were done at Revelation 14:13 with the 3rd angel's message. Then comes the return of Christ. There's more? Who is going to proclaim those messages?
Okay, good question. Jesus said that John the Baptist was Elijah in Matthew 11:14. And Ellen White said in Early Writings, page 233, that William Miller was raised up in the spirit and power of Elijah to proclaim the message. Ellen White also says this: prophecy must be fulfilled. The Lord says, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Malachi 4:5. Then she says this: somebody is to come in the spirit and power of Elijah, and when he appears, men may say, you are too earnest. You do not interpret the scriptures in the proper way. Let me tell you how to teach your message. So here we can see that Ellen White predicts another Elijah message in future tense. Here we have 3 types of Elijahs, and by this we understand that the prophetic office of Elijah is a progressive one.
Wow, so more messengers and more messages. I'm ready to hear about that.
Okay, well, hang on. We're not even done understanding the 3rd angel's message yet. Ellen White said this: this is our work. The light that we have upon the 3rd angel's message is the true light. The mark of the beast is exactly what it has been proclaimed to be. Not all in regard to this matter is yet understood and will not be understood until the unrolling of the scroll. So in this quote, Ellen White is telling us that there is more to understand in regard to the matter of the 3rd angel's message and the mark of the beast. Just like James White said in the previous quote, she says it'll not be understood until the scroll unrolls, or until prophecy has progressed to such a point that this accelerated understanding is revealed as present truth.
So Ellen White is saying there's more to understand about the mark of the beast than we thought that there was.
Yes, and more to understand about the 3rd angel's message. She says this about the loud cry: I saw angels hurrying to and fro in heaven, descending to the earth and ascending again to heaven, preparing for the fulfillment of some important event. Then I saw another mighty angel commissioned to descend to the earth, to unite his voice with the 3rd angel, and to give power and force to his message. Great power and glory were imparted to the angel, and as he descended, the earth was lightened with this glory. The work of this angel comes in at the right time to join in the last great work of the 3rd angel's message as it swells into a loud cry. This message seemed to be an addition to the 3rd message, joining it as the midnight cry joined the 2nd angel's message in 1844. So here we can see again that this mighty angel unites with the 3rd angel and lightens the earth with his glory, and it is an addition. But many Adventists will not embrace this light. I suppose this is partially because we do not really realize that in Revelation 14, there's many more angels and many more messages, and we'll see this in a minute. Look at these warnings from Ellen White to our church. She says in a section called Many Adventists Brace Themselves Against the Light, this is in the Last Day Events, she says there is to be in the Seventh-day Adventist churches a wonderful manifestation of the power of God, but it will not move upon those who have not humbled themselves before the Lord and opened the door of the heart by confession and repentance. In the manifestation of that power which lightens the earth with the glory of God, they will see only something which in their blindness they think dangerous, something which will arouse their fears, and they will brace themselves to resist it. Because the Lord does not work according to their ideas and expectations, they will oppose the work. Why, they say, should we not now know the Spirit of God when we have been in the work so many years? She also says this in that same section in Last Day Events. The third angel's message will not be comprehended. The light which would lighten the earth with its glory will be called a false light by those who refuse to walk in its advancing glory.
Well, that's scary. We don't want to brace ourselves against increasing light from heaven. Show us what you were talking about in Revelation 14.
Okay, well, we don't have time in this video to explain all the messengers and all the messages of the angels in Revelation 14. You can see our website for that information. But we just want to point out that there are indeed more than just 3 angels in Revelation 14, and we want to understand these messages if we want to proclaim the loud cry. But here is a brief overview. Upon closer examination of this chapter, one may observe that there are actually 6 angels therein, in verses 6, 8, and 9, which constitute the 3 angels' messages. And again, we have in verses 14, 15, 17, and 18. And if one takes into consideration that the one like the Son of Man on the cloud is a representation of Christ, and that Christ is also known as the angel of the Lord, then that makes a total of 7 angels in this chapter, and that's from Doug Mitchell. In Revelation 14:14, we see Christ is sitting on a cloud, and he has on his head 1 golden crown, and he has a sickle in his hand.
That's the second advent of Christ.
Well, not so fast. Remember that these angels are messages, or we're left without a rule to interpret the chapters, said James White in the beginning. The reference to one like the Son of Man on the cloud is not a prophecy of the second advent of Christ, for we can see, first of all, that Christ did not actually harvest when this message was given, but there was a delay. The angel or the message of Revelation 14:15 is the one who tells Jesus to thrust in his sickle. Secondly, we notice that Jesus here has only 1 crown, and at the second coming, in Revelation 19:12, he has many crowns. This is because in Revelation 14:14, he does not exercise his dominion over the nations as King of Kings and Lord of Lords with many crowns. Here, Christ is only king over the first fruits, the 144,000, who he then uses to harvest the second fruits, the grapes of Revelation 14:18, from the church and from the world. Thirdly, notice that there are more angels and another harvest in Revelation 14:17 through 19. These angels are coming from the temple in heaven and from the altar, showing that probation is still open. So he couldn't have come in Revelation 14:14 because probation is still open. When probation is closed, there's no more need for an altar, right? We see that in Revelation 21:22.
Also note that Christ does not have a silver trumpet with which to raise the righteous dead, but only a sickle in Revelation 14.
Right. Ellen White tells us this in her vision of the second coming of Jesus Christ. She says, "And on it sat the Son of Man, and on his head were many crowns," plural. "His hair was white and curly, and lay on his shoulders. His feet had the appearance of fire. In his right hand was a sharp sickle, in his left hand was a silver trumpet. Then Jesus' silver trumpet sounded, and as he descended on a cloud, wrapped in flames of fire, he gazed on the graves of the sleeping saints, then raised his eyes and hands to heaven and cried, 'Awake, awake, awake, ye that sleep in the dust, arise.'"
So Jesus is one of the angels that brings a message during the Advent movement.
Yes, actually, it was the 1888 message of justification by faith, the righteousness of Christ, which is prophesied in Revelation 14:14. Consider these statements from Ellen White concerning those days. The whole of Revelation 18 will be fulfilled in the glorious closing of this work. It hasn't yet been fulfilled, and the light of the 4th angel's message began to shine in that strange and impressive way in Minneapolis. The only reasonable conclusion is that the light was put out by human instrumentalities.
Okay, now this is big. Ellen White is saying the 4th angel is the inspiration behind the 1888 message. The 4th angel, that's the Son of Man, Jesus, but not at the second advent. This is Jesus with a message to the Seventh-day Adventist Church in 1888. Does she say anywhere that Jesus himself brought the 1888 message?
Yes, she does. The scenes which took place at this meeting in Minneapolis made the God of heaven ashamed to call those who took part in them his brethren. God's servants have no tame testimony to bear at this time, whether men will hear or whether they will forbear. He who rejects the light and evidence God has given liberally, bestowing upon us, rejects Christ. Here's another quote. Oh, that all who stepped in false paths at that notable meeting at Minneapolis and have felt the same spirit unfolding about them would let heaven's light into their souls, hating Jesus Christ in the form of his saints. Oh, how will God reveal this whole business in a place where they have never looked upon it? Here's another one. Why do you much cherish such bitterness against Elder A.T. Jones and Elder Wagner? God has given Brother Jones and Wagner a message for the people. You do not believe that God has upheld them, but he has given them precious light, and their message has fed the people of God. When you reject the message borne by these men, you reject Christ, the giver of the message. In Minneapolis, God gave precious gems of truth to his people in new settings. This light from heaven by some was rejected with all the stubbornness the Jews manifested in rejecting Christ. Many say, if I had only lived in the days of Christ, I would not have wrested his words or falsely interpreted his instruction. I would not have rejected and crucified him as did the Jews. But that will be proved by the way in which you deal with his message and his messengers today. Speaking of Jones and Wagner, the Lord is testing the people today as he tested the Jews in their day. If you accept the message, you accept Jesus. The brethren had all the evidence they would ever have that words of truth were spoken in regard to the righteousness of Christ. If they had distinguished the voice of the true shepherd, if they had opened their hearts to receive the light.
So I guess that explains why Jesus did not thrust in his sickle, but had to wait. We pretty much did reject the 1888 message.
Yes. So now moving on to the rest of the angels, the Revelation 14:15 angel is announcing the commencement of the judgment of the living, which intuitively would follow the judgment of the dead that was announced on October 22nd, 1844.
Obviously, if probation closes when people are still alive, and Jesus brings his reward with him when he comes, the living must be already judged before he returns.
Ellen White agrees. She says in Great Controversy, solemn are the scenes connected with the closing work of atonement. Momentous are the interests involved therein. The judgment is now passing in the sanctuary above. For many years this work has been in progress. Soon, none know how soon, it will pass to the cases of the living. She also says this, our advocate presents the cases of each successive generation and closes with the living. So now moving on, in verse 16, we see it is the harvest of the first fruits because it is a harvest of grain.
How can you tell it's a grain harvest?
Well, the word ripe at the end of verse 15 is actually dried, which is what you would want for a grain harvest. See Strong's G3583. This corresponds to the first fruit or spring harvest in the feast of Leviticus 23. The first fruits harvest is of barley and wheat, grain. The second fruits harvest is in the fall and are fruit harvests. Of course, you don't want a fruit crop to dry out and wither, but you would for the grains of spring. The message of Revelation 14:15 announces the judgment of the living, and the message of Revelation 14:16 separates the tares from the wheat. First, the tares are bound into bundles to be burned, and the wheat is to be put into the barn. That's Matthew 13:30. This is from Ben Roden in a book called The Law of Moses in the Light of Revelation 14. And we can also see that there's another harvest in Revelation 14:17 through 19. This is a harvest of grapes, a second fruits harvest represented by the ingathering at the Fall Feast of Tabernacles in Leviticus 23. Notice the loud cry in the message of the Revelation 14:18 angel.
Today has been a very brief overview of the seven angels' messages from Revelation 14. The main point is we want you to see that there's so much more to Revelation 14 than just the three angels' messages. This chapter is the Seventh-Day Adventist chapter, and there is so much more to understand. The first, second, and third angels' messages and their progressive revelation were a test during Ellen White's days. The additional messages of Revelation 14 have been and are being proclaimed. They are progressive and therefore are a test in our day. Are you not curious? Thank you for staying with us through the entire video. We invite you to visit our website, www.bdsda.com, to learn more about who we are and, just as important, who we are not. Please join us each week as we will continue to offer new and exciting insights for your Sabbath School studies. God bless.
Many blessings.